Welcome to Mindful Musings with the Mind Hub. Given the current ever-changing landscape, understanding and focusing on mental well-being has never been so important. In our latest interview series, we wanted to take some time out and chat with inspirational people about their experiences of mental health because, simply put, there is no health without mental health. Hello and welcome to this episode of Mindful Musings. Today it gives me great pleasure to have Andy Pike of Pike Performance with me to chat about the very important topic of men's mental health. My name's Trisha Wilkie. I'm founder and chief officer here at the Mind Hub. But Andy is a fabulous PT. He has been running Pike Performance for a number of years now, really helping people to simplify their health and fitness goals. He specializes in the optimization of time and health without fad diets or unachievable exercise plans, which I love because there's a lot of noise out there, which I know really gets Andy, and he loves to cut through all of that noise, and he does really simplify it. I know that our clients, we hear lots of great feedback about Andy's work, whether he's running a movement session, getting everyone moving at their desks, or whether he's there running some health checks, really helping to improve the health of your team. So Andy is our resident health and fitness guru here at the Mind Hub. He's also my personal PT. I'm very lucky to have him getting me moving, because otherwise I really wouldn't. But today, it just gives me great pleasure to have Andy here to talk to me about mental health, and I hope you find it interesting. So welcome, Andy.
Thank you.
So in the spirit of mental health, a large part of the work that I do and that we do here at the Mind Hub is helping people to feel more comfortable about talking about their mental health, and trying to go beyond that stock reply of just saying, yeah, I'm fine, when we know that fine can mean lots of different things, and sometimes it does mean fine, but sometimes it doesn't. And a lot of that is because there's a bit of a fear about talking about just saying how you really feel. So Andy, I'm going to ask you how you're feeling and task you with seeing if you can just answer me in quite a genuine way, how you feeling today, because I'm genuinely interested.
I think a great response to this, and I think it's so easy to say I'm fine, but the answer would be I'm better, because I realized that I needed to do some exercise this morning, which I did. And it's crazy how better you feel. Even being a coach for over a decade now, nearly two, you still forget sometimes. You're like, oh yeah, you know what? Doing this is going to really help you. So the answer is I'm better.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I'm better. And then that can lead to more questions, or or not, depending on how.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to all of this, I remember one of my clients actually, she mentioned, if you were to exercise first and then start to have conversation, you're more open to actually have a more in-depth conversation, being a bit more vulnerable. So I think it kind of works quite well with this whole month really about men's mental health. I think when a guy says I'm better, that means, I think, so much more because we've actually thought about it. And I think it's so easy to say I'm fine, because I think any guy listening will say, well, I don't need to I don't want to have that burden on someone else about what I'm feeling. I think when we feel like we're better, I think it tells you that there was a little bit of a dark cloud potentially coming, but now you're better. And I think that's the progress that I think we all need.
Yeah, so it feels like quite a safe use of language, a safe way of saying, yeah, I'm doing better. It wasn't so great, but it's better now. Yeah, it feels quite safe. And you're right, though. I think that you talk about burden. I think women, I think all genders perhaps have that worry. You don't really want to worry someone or burden them with how you're feeling, or and often that's because we don't get that very genuine sense that this person really wants to know. Because how often do we walk past people, in the street and say, hey, how are you, how are you feeling, and say, yeah, I'm fine. You, yeah, great, and you carry on walking, you don't even stop. So we don't often ask that in a genuine way. So yeah, and this is what we want to do, is to try to get people feeling it's okay. It's okay to say how you're really feeling or
Mm,
not, but if you want to express how you're feeling, that you can do that. Because fine can also mean, someone taught this to me once, and I'll give you the clean version, that fine can mean fed up, insecure, neurotic, and exhausted. Yeah. And I think on a lot
yeah.
of days, that's how it perhaps it really feels, right? So I am feeling today. So I mentioned just earlier that I'm very lucky to have you as my PT. So my body is a little bit broken today, because Andy worked me hard yesterday, and I didn't think my legs were going to work today. But because I was feeling good, I'd exercised, I'd had a good sleep,
Mm.
and I woke up and I started my couch to 5K today. I was out the door at 10 to 7. I'm just going to polish my halo as I say.
Well done.
But I felt brilliant. I felt brilliant. And I've been really buzzing for the rest of the day,
Mm.
and haven't needed coffee to get that either. So, yeah, I'm aching, but I'm feeling good. I'm feeling quite clear in the mind, which at my age and this stage in life is quite rare. So I'm going to hold on to that for now.
And you know what? I think with all of that, especially let's say with training yesterday for yourself and even today, I think everyone maybe listening to this, a big variable here is exercise and movement. And we're looking at like it's such an easy thing to kind of push past and say, oh no, I know I need to exercise, but I'm not going to do it. But it just shows you what significant change it can do in terms of a positive change to your day, or even in a couple of minutes, you're thinking, you know what, that was actually genuinely worth it. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah. I've certainly now at the moment I'm exercising. I was exercising purely not because I enjoy it, but because it's good for my mental health. But now I'm starting to enjoy it as well as it being good for my mental health. So um, just got to keep it going.
It's the
Okay.
consistency, right? That's the challenge.
That's the challenge. So this month in the wellbeing calendar, there are quite a few things going on this month, but there's a large focus on men's mental health. So we have Movember, which is a wonderful organization that works really hard to highlight the issues that men face with their physical and their mental health. And we have International Men's Day coming up on the 19th of November. So of course, men's mental health is important. Like all of our mental health, it's important that we talk about it and raise awareness every day. But I do think these awareness days and months are a really good opportunity to, share experiences and connect and keep those conversations going. Because, mental health, it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care how much money you've got in the bank. It doesn't care about your socio-economic status. It doesn't care what gender you are. We all share a common humanity in that we're all human beings. Yeah. And as human beings, we experience the full range of emotions, and our life experiences um, affect how we think, how we feel, how we move through the world. But for me, it feels like that's where that commonality kind of ends, because there's a real disparity between the genders, how men experience mental health issues, how they access or not help for their mental health issues, how they cope with how they're feeling. There's quite a lot of differences there between the genders. And, sadly, those statistics still exist that men are 3 times more likely to die by suicide than women. Now, that's despite women being twice as likely to experience depression than men. Now, I know depression isn't the only risk factor for suicide, but it is one of the big risk factors. And so we're losing way more men to suicide, and yet men are far less likely to access psychological therapies. And in fact, a sobering statistic is that only 36% of the referrals to the NHS's talking therapy service, which is free and available to all, um, only 36% of those referrals are for men. Yeah. So I'm constantly thinking, why? Yeah, why is that? Why are so few men coming forward to talk about the issues that they're facing? And again, mental health is very complex. There are many reasons why we experience poor mental health and mental illness, and there are many reasons why someone may not be coming forward or feel able to. It could be lack of awareness, there could be fear, there's lots of stigmatizing barriers out there, societal barriers, and certainly I think societal constructs and the stereotypes that society have created about the different gender roles, I think, have a huge part to play in these barriers and what are kind of really preventing men from perhaps coming forward. I don't know, is that something that what do you
Yeah,
think
I
about that?
think I think it's really, again, it's a big generational shift. I think we're at an age now where people are realizing that we do need to talk about this. And I think as a man, it's very easy to have an ego, have pride, and say, you know what, no, I can do this by myself. But I do think, especially as as a guy gets older, social networks reduce, and if you have a family, there are different priorities. So I think a big thing around health overall, most people, especially men, we don't really talk about any kind of emotional things. And if you do, I think I'm probably one of the guys that actually does. I'm happy to talk about it. And I'm probably some of my friends' person that they can actually open up to and have that ability, because most men aren't equipped. They don't understand it because it's so easy to just put it under the carpet and get on with it. So the reasons why, in my opinion, I think men don't, is because of the fear of maybe rejection, and maybe even a little bit of that people may think, oh, I'm really kind of hesitant to say anything to that person. Whereas for men, we just need to talk and let it be. Again, it's not promoting anything like that, but when guys, like kids, when you're in like playground, you have a little scuffle, boys just get over it and they're best friends after. But for if we were to just rewire that and think, okay, for men, we just need to talk about it. It's no other things except that's how I'm feeling right now, and I voiced it. It's like
Mm,
lessening a load. I talk about it a lot, especially with a lot of parents I coach, is this mental load of having that ability to lessen the load a little bit with someone you can trust, knowing that you're not going to get anything negative in return or any judgment in return, because it takes a lot for a man to say I need help, because it shows you that that person, that man has got to a degree where they feel they physically can't do it or
mm,
mentally can't understand it themselves.
mm.
And again, it could just be my way of upbringing of the ego side of things. Like, no, you will find a way. But yeah, it's a long-winded answer, but
Yeah.
I think it does hopefully make sense to a lot of guys just thinking about it. Because there is, I don't know if it's a thing, there's an element of like a men's, let's say, language. We have just an understanding of, like, even the nod. Every guy knows about the different nods, right? It can mean a
I don't know
hundred
about
different
this,
things,
but
right?
yeah.
So there's, if any, if again, you see a guy just have a little nod, whether they're in the gym, whether they're
Oh,
walking past someone, it's just like a little nod. It could be a number of different things. It could be, do you want to have the, and they know. It's
yeah,
just a weird thing,
yeah.
right? But if we were able to kind of maybe, I don't know, amplify that communication into just talking about stuff, wouldn't that be amazing? But again, it's because we just don't do it, because
No,
we are potentially maybe sometimes perceived as the rock. We need to be the person, the provider, the protector, right?
yeah.
And yes, life and society has changed a lot, but I do think still it's instilled in us. because
Mm.
it's a generation, and talk about this in the next 20, 30 years, probably be very, very different.
Hope so.
Maybe a bit more aware, right? But I think now I do think we're at like a more of a discovery of all of this than
Mm.
anything.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, great. And it's great to be part of that, isn't it?
Mm,
I feel because, like you were saying, it is difficult. It's difficult for a lot of people to reach out. I found it difficult myself at times to do that, but I can see how for a guy that would even feel even harder because of, like you were just saying, the stereotypes and those
mm,
gender the concepts, the social constructs around those gender roles that makes it difficult. So it's really difficult for people to reach out. So I'm
mm.
constantly thinking, how can we reach in? And so
Yeah.
role modeling, role modeling the behavior you see, you talk about it, you ask people how they are, and how they're doing. And I feel really the best way to connect with people and to reach out to people and connect with people more deeply is to share our stories. Yeah. Is to share our stories that people can really resonate with.
Mm,
I think that's so powerful, and perhaps one of the best ways to connect when someone can listen to someone telling their story, how they felt, what happened to them, what helped them through that. You will connect with that person on some level, even if you've not experienced that yourself. Just because we are all human, that empathy, you're going to connect, it's going to resonate, it's going to help other people or help you to help others by sharing
yeah.
and passing that story on. So that is why, Andy, I am so full of gratitude for you today, for agreeing just to come and have a chat with me online, that we can share, because I know that you've had some struggles in the past, with your mental health, and in particularly with postnatal depression or perinatal anxiety, depression, or following the birth of your first child. And I'm really, I say, so grateful for you to sort of share that experience, because that's not something that we really hear about, postnatal depression or peri-antenatal struggles in new fathers. And yet, the Institute of Health Visiting report that at least 1 in 10 fathers will experience
I,
PND within
yeah.
that first year. And that number is quite significantly higher in fathers whose partners are also experiencing PND too. So, um, it happens. It's so much more. It's not just that drop in hormones in a woman that can
Mm,
trigger postnatal depression. There are other factors too. And so, yeah, it's not inconceivable. And the stats are there. It's not, men are suffering, too. And clearly, some more needs to be done. So I wondered then, would you be happy if I hand it over to you now just to share, yeah, just
of
your
course.
experience? Thank you.
So it's a very interesting story because it starts um, prior to my son being born. So my wife being pregnant, it hits you like a ton of bricks. So you think, wow, I actually don't feel like I'm ready to be a dad yet. I feel like I'm still a kid. I've just come finished from school. You just feel like, am I ready? I don't think anyone's ready to be a parent. It just happens, right? You just have to embrace the madness. So I think that was the initial part, and starting businesses and changing businesses all came at once for me. Um, and being very proud and try to provide for your family, it all really hit me massively. So even having to this point, even in this room, being so crippled with anxiety, the what ifs, and also the depression as well of feeling not good enough to be successful and everything. It's massively crippling. So this happened prior to my son being born. So this is antenatal. And it got to a point where every day was just a bit of a struggle. It's easy to put like a mask on your face, and for a guy, it's very easy to do that. When again, you said if a guy says I'm fine, they're not fine. And if I asked myself back at that time, I said, actually, how are you really doing? It would have made me kind of open up a bit more, because that just that word really doing, it says, are you what be honest with what's actually going on. So it got to a point in which it's a sticking point. I thought there needs to be an element of intervention here. Like, what am I going to do? I've had therapy in the past, and it got to a point speaking to um, a doctor, and they said, right, okay, we'll get you on to sertraline. And I was very, I wasn't open to it massively, but I thought, you know what, there needs to be some sort of shift here. Tried it, didn't help. It was actually making me worse.
Mm.
And then come January time, um, after a bit, I decided, you know what, there has to be another thing. That I went on to fluoxetine. It really just leveled things out. It allowed me to just have some sort of peace. And I do think I was very anti drugs when it comes to assisting with mental health. I was very, now I can do it, I can do everything. But sometimes, and if again anyone listening to this, they're like, you know what, I'm the same. This is it. It really was questioning, do I want to do that? Do I want to rely on something? But what it did, it allowed me just to become at peace and slow me down a bit and allow things, instead of being in that kind of future state of anxiety or that past state of depression, it allowed me to just bring myself up into a bit of more of a present state. So in the lead up to my son being born, it made me realize, okay, well, what I'm on, it is a temporary solution, but I know that it's going to allow me to be in a better state to improve myself and look at what things do I need to do to just help myself with my mental health. And it really interesting actually. So one an old friend of mine said to me, Andy, like, just be aware that the first 6 months of your baby being born, it might just be a little bit of a challenge. Like, I'm here if you need it. I completely dismissed them. I was like, no, I'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And it's crazy just thinking back at now. So again, birth was a little bit more challenging than most. And we have a lovely son. And it got to a point where I was like, oh, I don't feel like there's a lot I can do here. Again, depending how, if your partner decides to breastfeed or not. As a dad, you can't really do much. There's not a lot. You maybe do a bit of nappy changing. You might be their whole body. If they have a C-section, you have to do pretty much most things. But kind of coming back to that, it made me realize there was maybe two things that you do as a dad, as a new dad. And we had a doula at the time, and she said, Andy, you'll either be someone who's really welcoming help, or you'll be maybe the kind of the gorilla dad that's very protective and wants to do everything. I was that gorilla dad for a bit, and it made me realize like that's not helping anyone here. But it's because of the maybe quite the traumatic time of the birth, it made me being very protective. So all in this period of time, I was still on fluoxetine and processing it. And the sad thing was, it made me also realize, like you've mentioned, there isn't a huge support. There is very little support, or maybe there's a very little awareness of support. There's definitely support out there, but it's not accessible easily. They can't just search and it'll pop up straight away. You have to actively look at what can you do. And I spoke to a lot of the nurses, and they were like, "Yeah, there just really isn't. Oh, there might be this app you can use." And it was baffling because again, the health visitor came in, "Oh, how you doing?" and didn't really ask me, the dad. I was thinking, there is two people here. And I appreciate the journeys of a mum and a dad are very, very different. But I think that's what kind of made me realize, you know what, there needs to be a shift here. But also having just those conversations, like even this one should hopefully trigger people to be like, oh, there needs to be a change. But also, I probably just need to speak to people. It just helps you be
Mm.
like, oh yeah, you know what? I didn't tell you about kind of the birth because that's going to be very traumatic. No one really want to have kids if everyone told them about it. Um, but having those conversations really help. So fast forward, um, probably about a year after deciding to potentially have some interventions of medication, around about this time in about 2022, I decided to wean myself off. Spoke to the doctors and they said, yeah, no problem. Just keep us posted. But again, yet again, very little support in that respect. But it just made me realize most men aren't really equipped with understanding how to do this, being reflective, being aware of their emotions, and maybe the thoughts that they might think are just temporary. And I really I understand why the statistics for suicide in men are so high. I know because the thoughts that I've thought in the past, I look at it, I could see them creeping in. I thought, no, that doesn't mean that's not real. That's something that I need to acknowledge that it's okay. That's there, but it's about the process, and it made me determined, and even the dads that I coach to just know that they've got a cheerleader in the back, understanding that they have someone that they can talk to that just gets it. They don't expect anything in return because I do think a lot of men, if they were to be vulnerable, especially with a woman, is that woman going to use it against them in an argument? And that's a big, big thing that I think any woman hopefully may learn from just having listened to this conversation is never use that on a man ever. Because what that does is then just breaks the trust and the bond of that individual to be open up again. And I think that's something that it's not just about the men. I think it's about education of the women as well when it comes to this, and whether it's friends or partners, understanding the difference between um, men and female, or male and female mental health. It's really looking at there are different things that we need to be aware of, but also know that yeah, it's a hard one. Hopefully, what I've spoken about this story is maybe giving people a bit of a like an awareness that you can push through, you can overcome these real kind of big obstacles. Because I think sometimes um, when people are really struggling with their mental health, they forget about their why. Of like, what is your why? Why do you get up in the morning? What's going to really give you that purpose? And for men, we love lists. If anyone tells a man, just like, here's the list, this is what you got to do. Even you talking to me about this podcast, right? I realized I didn't even say, how are you? It's because I was like, you told me to answer this and I'll do it. Prime example, right? So I think more than anything, the solution for me to get away from this quite traumatic and very painful time in my life was to understand that exercise massively helped me, but it was having the vulnerability to accept help, not only from a professional but also from medication in my situation, to be like, you know what, it's okay, and it's temporary for me. And it was such a rewarding feeling knowing that I came off it because I did the process. I made sure I was reflective and put the work in to make sure that I didn't um let me rephrase. I wasn't um or I knew the feelings that I was thinking and the emotions I was thinking was a side effect of weaning off the medication. And I think not a lot of people talk, I've not really heard anyone talk about this, especially when it comes to medication, of actually weaning. And you definitely have to have um, medical consultant led around all of this. And it made me realize how powerful reflection or reflective practices you could do. And I think that's a really good thing, I think, for anyone. And honestly, I've converted so many clients. I'm actually just saying, how's your day been? Can you actually reflect on your day and how's it been? Most people just go 1,000 miles an hour and they don't appreciate what they've achieved every single day. Elements of gratitude and affirmation. It sounds a bit woo-wooey, but actually that stuff there is so powerful because we have been so instilled to look towards the negative, especially men. Oh no, I need to be better. I need to be better at this. I need to provide, etc. If you were to just say, you know what, I've showed up, I've done my work, I'm here for my family, I've had an amazing day with my family. And that's really, if you were to look at it, that would be a little say, golden nugget that's really helped me as a dad, as a man, to get past the hard times of being depressed and anxious, is to really appreciate that sitting down and being present and reflecting is such a powerful tool.
Oh, it really is. So, yeah, you've been on a real kind of path of discovery, and it is
Mm,
very different for, different
yeah.
people, different things work or are more supportive, aren't they, for
Mm,
different people. And it is a process of just keep moving forward and trying new things. You tried one form of medication, it didn't work
yeah.
for you, but you knew there had to be a change. So you went back, you tried something else. And I love, the fact that you did that, and
Mm,
like you were really honest and said at first, you're like, I don't want that, because there's a lot of stigma and taboo around
yeah.
taking medication. If you were in pain, because you were, you had having a flare up, an arthritic flare up, you would take
Mm,
medication for it. But when it comes to our mental health, we do tend to think about medication slightly differently and don't view it in the same way. But yeah, it worked for you. It helped you. It helped you then to get up and then start trying
uh,
new things. And so for you, that rest, reflection, gratitude.
yeah.
Also, what was important as well, I took from that was, it's not just, we are responsible for our own well-being, of course. We have to take ownership of that,
Mm,
and we have to um, keep moving forward ourselves. But then our, uh, our connections around us, the people around us as well. It's very important that we feel safe. We have that safe and secure environment. We feel psychologically safe. And I got a sense there as well, you were saying for us all to have just a little
mm.
bit more empathy and understanding of each other, um,
Yeah, and I
is,
think I think the hard part about that, and I think it's for anyone, it goes for men and women, it's understanding that some people are not equipped. Some people, depending on how they've been brought up, they might have not been aware of mental health. They just didn't think it was a
mm,
thing, right?
I think it's very common, and I think it is still very common. That's why, Mental Health First Aid England now, they have a
Yeah.
mission to have 1 in 10 people trained in some form of mental health awareness. I think they're down to something like 1 in 40 or just under that now. When I first began teaching MHFA, I think we were at something like 1 in 96. So we're all trying. That's all we can do. Keep having these
Yeah.
conversations, showing up, showing a little bit of our vulnerability, asking each other how we are. And slowly, I really do feel like we can send out these positive ripple effects for change, but it just takes a little bit of time. But
It does.
it does.
It
So
patience.
exercise, gratitude, reflection, connection really helped you in your path to wellness. Having the awareness, I just want to pick up on this point
Mm,
too, because it was a really important point that you
yeah.
made. You talked about suicidal thinking,
Mm,
but you recognize that, this didn't mean that you were going to end your life in any way. You
no.
you recognize that it was temporary. Now, I just want to pick up on that now
Mm,
because um, it's a really important point to make. People are often frightened of having these types of thinking. It's very common. Around 20% of the population will have some thoughts of dying at some point in their lifetime. It does not mean that they'll go on to end their life. When you have a thought like this, it's not because you wish to die, it's your mental state.
mm,
You can't find a resolution at the moment, and your
yeah.
mind starts inclining you to feel that maybe this is the way out. But often, most often, that is a fleeting thought and it is temporary, but it most clearly is a sign. Although don't be so worried about that, but also don't ignore it.
Mm,
For anyone who is starting to have these types of thoughts, reach out, chat with your friend, chat with your GP, pick up the phone to EAP, just tell someone, because it is a sign that you need a little more support. So this isn't a suicide first aid session, but I just wanted to highlight that because you you were very insightful. You recognized that this was a fleeting, temporary thought, but nonetheless, it was there. And so I just wanted to pick up on that. So thank you, Andy, so much for sharing your experiences. And you said earlier you hope that it might resonate and help someone, and I really believe it will. Um, for anyone out there who is feeling like they could do with some help with their mental health, whether it's due to peri, anti, or postnatal depression or something else, please, following this, you know, do that. Pick up the phone, speak to a friend, make contact with the EAP, get in touch with your mental health first aider at work, pick up the phone to your GP. Don't just sit with it. Reach out for help. So there are lots of wonderful resources, helplines, places that you can go to for help, and I'll have these on the recording at the end. But you've got the Samaritans on 116 123. A lovely service, which I think is quite accessible for a lot more people these days, is the text service Shout. So you can just text the word shout to 85258, and a trained person will be back in contact with you, and a chat will continue from there. I've mentioned your GP, your employee assistance program, but for today's session, I came across an organisation that I wasn't aware of. I now will be promoting their services. They're called PANDAS, and that stands for Postnatal and Awareness Support. So this is for parents who are experiencing struggles, but they do have a dedicated section, helpline and group for fathers who are experiencing this. So they acknowledge that this exists for new fathers. So look them up. Okay, thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that session with us. Any questions, please just drop us a line. The contact details will be at the end of this video. But for now, thank you, Andy. Sending much love and
Thank you.
gratitude to you. And speak to you soon. Take care.